For those who haven't actually gone through the abstracts, I'll just read it out very quickly. Syncretism has been an inherent part of Indian art from earliest times. An in-depth study of the concept of syncretism, literally meaning a union or fusion of different systems of belief, shows that Indian art, mostly religious in content, was predominantly heterogeneous in thought, iconology, and art discussed over the past century or so by several great scholars with deep insight and in-depth understanding. The idea of syncretism was essentially understood as a critical point of Indian art from earliest times. This prolific research brought out varied aspects of Indian art and iconography. Syncretism was also discussed as a conscious quality of Indian art directed by synchronous literature and acquired by the artists of the ancient times, which was a very important aspect of Indian art always, which aimed to bring together various ideologies to maintain an atmosphere of coexistence and even tolerance. I would be referring to these two terms from my point of view, coexistence and even tolerance, in my during the course of my presentation. So here I propose to discuss certain underlying predilections of syncretism in Indian thought, amply illustrated in art and iconography. The origin and evolution of images of God, their art, style, and content manifested in Buddhism, Hindu and Jain pantheons were essentially symbolic of this spirit of syncretism, which proliferated in India and other parts of the ancient Asiatic world. I would like to expand on thought, iconology, and art, as I mentioned earlier. It is a personal opinion that this study of art history, the significance of thought in this personal study of art history, the significance of thought comprises the foremost point of interpretation. Art, aesthetic, and for this, for the present discussion, iconography are auxiliary to the essence of thought, which has gone behind the creation of art. To define it in simpler terms, the grammar of art is pivotal for the interpretation of an artistic creation. The art of India, being religious for the most part, the rise of the art of thought becomes even more important. The overwhelming inclination towards syncretism that we see in the art of India has prompted many scholars to look for answers in the objects of art created over the centuries. The answer to this thought or the philosophy was, more often than not, found to be very humanistic, prompted, and this prompted the tendency to syncretize and to bring together simple but profound ideas in the ultimate creation work art. Keeping this in mind, the selection of examples which I'm going to cite here in the discussion are deliberately random, including narrative themes, plastic art, iconographic interpretations, and even painting. Ultimately, the synthesis of all forms of thought, considered as schools of thought in the later centuries, combined into aesthetic marvels created by the artist from the earliest times to become supreme objects of devotion. Furthermore, the dissemination of Indian art and culture to other Asiatic countries brought about similar results in their art and iconography. The metamorphoses that Indian art and religious ideologies passed through were transmitted to these regions in successive ways. Thus, when there was interchange and interaction in the various schools of Indian art, there was change in the art of these countries also. The factors which made this dissemination possible was trade routes, missionary activities of monks, pilgrims, merchants, Kshatriya nobles, Brahman priests, and Buddhist monks. So, this is a brief introduction to what we will be discussing here. As I said that I have taken random examples from the three basic religious art forms in India, that is Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. There are certain thoughts, and for this I have deliberately not included the very, very sublime examples of syncretism we discussed yesterday also, and they will be discussed later on also as per the topic that I've seen. I have taken some random examples which miss the eye many times, but they are of profound meaning. And their synthetism and syncretism and the philosophy behind them is also very important to understand um, the spirit of Indian art and its various schools and various thoughts and um, in totality. So, as my first example, I take the Kirti Mukha. The Kirti Mukha is known to be the manifestation of Shiv, the creator of the beast from his third eye. We refer here to the Puranic story of Jalandhar, who sent Rahu, who was very audacious, and he sent Rahu to demand the hand of Parvati from Shiva himself. The symbolism of the Kirti Mukh, or the face of glory, as a symbol of good luck to ward off the impious and to protect the devotee, underwent multifarious changes in its iconographic and architectural usages in India. So we see, as I said, that I'm taking random examples. So here you see some examples from narrative art. This is a medallion showing the Kirti Mukha from Bodh Gaya, and then this is a pillar capital, and above that the base molding of a cave entrance, and you can see the Kirti Mukha here also. They are stylistically and in the design also they are slightly different, but nevertheless they are Kirti Mukha. Much the same, the art and architecture of Bali and Java abounds with depictions of Kirti Mukha in images on walls and even on entrances to sacred spaces. But none express the intangible spirit of Kirti Mukha as comprehensively as the soulful performance of the Barong and Rangda dance in Bali, Indonesia. Barong, with his leonine mask, virtually indistinguishable with the lion-faced Kirti Mukha, makes effort to conquer, appease, and to exorcise the evil spirit of Rangda. So now here the synthesis and the syncretism of thought and art comes together in iconography. We see that Kirti Mukha, the basic purpose of Kirti Mukha is to ward off evil, and when it more metamorphosized from the Indian subcontinent to probably the coastal areas of Orissa and towards Java and Bali, the entire concept changes and it is used as, again, the basic concept is the same to ward of evil, but the entire rendering of the Kirti Mukha becomes very different. In-depth researches on the origin and significance of the Kirti Mukha or Panchvakra by several Indologists like Dr. B.S. Agarwal, A.K. Kumaraswamy, Doreshwar Bhattacharya, and others have brought forth various concepts which may have led to the evolution of its iconography. The study of these theories unveils the spiritual, ideological, and magical amalgam which serves as a vital force behind the transmogrification of the Kirti Mukha. Transmogrification means the changing over. The antecedents of the various changes that the Kirti Mukha underwent may be traced back to the Upanishads, and with some remarkable examples illustrated here from Bodh Gaya, Ajanta, Kathmandu. This is the next slide. Kathmandu, and to Java. Some of the conclusions drawn by Gautam Vajracharya are quoted that Mukha, also known as Panchavakra, is also a word for lion. In Indica, atmosphere is regularly represented by a grotesque face or head, preferably that of lion. So this small but very significant aspect of iconography, bearing such sublime thoughts, metamorphosed or changed and underwent so many variations in different countries that somewhere in certain countries of Southeast Asia, this it was used as a motive for entrances to caves also. So this is one very important but less discussed aspect of syncretism. Then continuing with this, according to Emil, who is Professor Emeritus Brown University, Rhode Island, the giant Leonine Itimukha entrance of the Goa Gaja cave at Bedulu, Bali, is like the witch Ranga with bulging eyes, prominent nostrils, and flowing matted hair. Ethnologically also, the Barong and Rangna masks of Bali exhibit conspicuous similarities about the Barong mask traces their origins to the Padma Puran as per Henry Dill. So this is one thing. Then we move to another random example that I've taken from Hinduism. The next is Chaturvyu Vishnu. This is a beautiful image of Chaturvyu Vishnu kept in the Mathura Museum. It belongs to the Kushana period. It is an idol from Mathura Museum and belongs to the Kushan period. It is identified as Vasudev Krishna as the central figure with Balram, Aniruddha and Pradyumna, which are lost, emerging from it. The idol is considered as an important cultural testimony to the emergence of Vaishnavism from the Vedic deities. Again, we come to syncretism within the diverse philosophies of India, existing within India. So this is a synthesis of certain concepts and deities of the Vedic period and their fusion with the Puranic and later deities. So this idol is considered an important cultural testimony to the emergence of Vaishnavism from the Vedic deities Vasudev Sankarshan, also known as Balram, and also the earliest symbol of Pratyaksha Puja, which became so important in the later Smart tradition. Pratyaksha Puja or Pratyaksha Devata, worshipping the idol or worshipping the concept of the idol in concrete form. It has been explained very well by E.S. Alvita in the Bhavan's History and Culture of Indian People. So now, these are two examples of syncretism, which are random, but they are very, very significant. Now I come to Buddhism. The Dasharath Jatak, a very interesting story, is story number 461 from the Jatak tales. It relates the story of King Dasharath of Banaras, his sons Ram and Lakshman, or Lakhana as written, and their sister Sita and half brother Bharat. There is no Shatrughan in this story. The tale starts off on relatively familiar footing with Ram and Lakhana packed off to the forest side and Sita accompanying them as another dutiful sibling. It, however, does not proceed to take on epic proportions that the Valmiki Ramayana does, because there is no kidnapping and therefore there is no Hanuman or Ravan or Sugriv or Bali in this. The Dasharath Jatak, as with the other Jataks, is more of a parable which focuses on handling grief, in this case due to the loss of father. Bharat comes to the foremost, when Dasharatha dies prematurely, thanks to an astrological prediction, Bharat comes to the forest to inform his siblings of their father's passing. Unlike his brothers and Sita and sister, Ram absorbs the news calmly. On being asked how he was able not to be overwhelmed with grief, he then instructs them on the impermanence of things and other philosophies and thoughts of the Indian system. The narrative then returns to familiar ground with Bharat ruling Ayodhya under the guidance of Rama's footwear until the term of exile ends. Rama has a triumphant return, and this is the end of the Jatak with a certain meaning behind it, which was the basic aim of all the Jatak tales. And as you can see, it is being shown here. The Bharut, one of the Bharut panels shows this Jatak here. This is very interesting here. There are certain Buddhist symbols behind. And then much later, we come across this manuscript with the painting narrating the same Jatak. This Jatak became extremely popular in the Far East, especially China and even Korea, I should say. Now we move to the next example. This is Mahakal. In Hindu philosophy, Mahakal is the eternal timekeeper, and it is sometimes perceived that the seated images of Shiva in Dhyan Mudra symbolize the constancy of time, that is the manifestation of Mahakal itself, or the manifestation of time itself. However, Mahakal in Buddhism is a wrathful manifestation of Shiva Bhairav, taken up in the esoteric Buddhist text as a fierce manifestation of Avalokiteshvar as the guardian of the Buddhist law and the Sangha community. He became very popular and continues to remain so because we still find Tibetan people making thankas of Bhairav, and they are very popular with the people. He is shown here, I am referring to this image. He is shown here enthroned on a lotus cushion. Another supports his pendant foot, wielding a sword, shown here, wielding a sword and trident and displaying a skull cap, a kapal. His missing fourth hand likely held the flaying knife. He wears a skull diadem with radiating flames. A skull garland is slung across his waist again, and snakes from his sacred cord and armband. He can also be seen make an offering below. The Sanskrit inscription on the pedestal, as you can see here, reads, it is in Proto-Bengali, and it reads, this is the pious gift of Dahapati, Mahakal of 11th and 12th century, courtesy Metropolitan Museum of Art. So Mahakal here is seen like this. In Tibetan Buddhism, he is very popular, and we can see him like this. This is an earlier image. This is a later image, and this style of images is very common and typical feature of the art of the 11th century in Eastern India. And this is a 15th century Thanka, where again he's shown, but he's only two arms, and he's shown in a very different way with the other forms of bodhisattvas all around him. So we see the metamorphosis again of Mahakal from the conceptual timekeeper of the Vedic or and post-Vedic period to the later period up to the 15th century. So now I move to the next slide. This is for Jainism. This is an example that I've taken for discussing some aspects of syncretism in Jainism. As syncretism may also be considered as the temporary, ambiguous existence of elements from its interpretation for Jainism becomes very unique. Though syncretism means the different forms in which religious traditions have influenced each other, we notice marginal acceptance of single elements in Jainism in general. Therefore, Jainism is singular example because its essential characteristics remain constant from the earliest times and are not touched by the assimilation or syncretism of new elements infused in its pantheon and not so much as ideology. So this is a very typical thing about syncretism and Jainism. Although we do find syncretism in we do we can see syncretism in Jainism in the form of yakshas and Shasvan Devtas at some period of time, and how the yakshas and their spouses, yakshinis, otherwise known as the Shasvan Devtas, first appeared in in the Jain pantheon. There is no way that we can ascertain that, though it can be said that with reliable certainty that these demigods do not represent purely Jain elements, but the form in which we find them is an outcome of a mixture of ideas. The names of some of the yakshas and Shasan Devtas betray unmistakable identity with those of the Hindu deities, while the symbols connect them are also of those of the latter class. So the iconography is very, very similar. It doesn't undergo any change, but they are these yaksha and yakshinis are shown in association with Jain establishments, basically temples, and they are on the walls of the temples, the Jain temples. This is from Madhya Pradesh, and this is kept in the Mathura Museum. Next. Yeah, there's one more thing that I would like to mention. His attendants are many, and several of them are mentioned in canonical texts as Jains of the Jains, like Purnabhadra, Manibhadra. The Yaksh Manibhadra is very famous. It bears an inscription that it is for the Tirthankar. The image has been set there for Tirthankar. And then Manibhadra, it is from Mathura. Shalibhadra, Sumanabhadra, Purnaraksha, Sravana, Sarvayasya, Yasas, Sarvakam, Samruddha, Amog, and names are definitely mentioned as associated yakshas and yakshinis with the various Tirthankaras in the Jain pantheon. Now, we have discussed some examples from the basic orthodox religions of India. And whenever we start discussion on syncretism, we talk about these religions and their intermingling with each other, then also bringing in some external elements, and then also changing over according to the changing aspects and thoughts and philosophies. evolving within the society constantly. So all this uh, is always there, and we are always discussing them. But there are certain other aspects also, like I discussed Kirtimukha also. There are certain other aspects in Jainism, about Syncretism, which I would like to put forth before you. They are of the folk deities. We may also refer to the folk concept of the Gram Devas. Every village in India has Gram Devas to protect the villagers from calamities and diseases. This is very true, especially for Eastern India and South India, and even certain portions of Goa and the Western coast. So these folk deities are still very important, and their traditions are very alive, and there are several festivals almost every month which are organized to appease these gods, because it is said that the deities or the Grama Devtas were malevolent and benevolent both. So they are always appeal. Basically, they are not. You do not do much of introspection, retrospection, or any sublime religious thought is not associated with them. Though when the fusion or the syncretism began, those thoughts also came together with these gram data. But they are very basic, very simple, and more often than not, they are worshipped out of fear, and they are worshipped for appeasement. And of course, for worldly pleasures and worldly riches and good harvest and good rainfall and good progeny and a lot of good things in life also. The spirit and belief associated with these demigods intermingle with the Orthodox pantheon, resulting in the emergence of a very significant iconographic category uh, of these syncretic gods. For example, we have the deity called Hayagriv. Now, horse is a very important thing, and the the spiritual significance of horse can be seen right from the Rig Veda, then the Yajurveda. There's several mentions of the horse, and the horse was basically a very prized possession from the earliest times. So, and the horse is also said to be one animal who unifies with the master in spirit and in body also. That is why we find certain examples of horse sacrifice and so on and so forth, but that's a different topic. We will not go there. Now, Hayagriv is, Haya means horse, and Grieve means a deity with a horse's head. He's very popular, and in fact, he became so popular that he got absorbed in the Orthodox religions and pantheons also. And he's basically worshipped for freedom from mental diseases. When a person has certain psychological problems, and he has certain issues where he cannot resolve his thought processes, that is the time when a person is supposed to, this is what is given in the text, that he is supposed to worship, to grieve, high grief for this region, for this reason. The other goddess, very popular, is Shitala, also called Shitalamma in the south, and Shitala in the north. She is a very popular goddess. She is usually worshipped in June and July with several festivals attributed to her, and she's supposed to be the goddess of smallpox. So Shitala is, in fact, one of the most popular present day disease goddess, I should say. She's not very beautiful in appearance and sits on a donkey with a twig from the neem tree in her hand and a broom in another hand. And that is basically symbolizing the aspect that if she is she becomes angry or displeased for some reason, she can cause the disease also, but appeasing her in the right manner will prevent the disease also. Not presently
There is problem with the internet, I think.
facing an similar situation. You can't hear me, ma'am?
Yes, now it is okay.
Okay. So
Again, it has gone.
here she is shown in two different aspects. But as you can see, this is a syncretism of Buddhist concept with the concept of Shitala. You can see Hayagri here, you can see Shitala here. And there are two human figures beneath her feet, and they both have, you cannot see it very clearly here, but in the description it is given that there are round holes made all over the body of these two human figures to show that they are afflicted with the disease of smallpox. And here she is shown with bulging eyes and a glaring smile. And she's holding a leaf in her hand, and she also has the bow and arrow, which is a very typical attribute of Parnashabdi. So this is one example of the fusion, first thing, of Gram Devtas with philosophical concepts, and then also the fusion of two religious thoughts coming together and the emergence of a new iconographic form in the form of Parnashabdi. Yeah, she's shown with three faces. uh, Her color is green, and of course, Vahan is in human form. She's standing on two human figures, and she's standing in the Pratyalid Asana, where her legs are spread across with one knee bent, and there is an ankush also in her hand. The two images of Parnashabri have been discovered by N.K. Bhattacharya, and he has reported these images. These two images follow the sadhan more accurately in detail, the sadhanmala. Okay, the angry laugh has been correctly depicted in the three faces, and the belly is slightly protruding. To the right and the left are two divinities, the Hygri, the Hindu god of fever or mental disease, and Shitala, the goddess of smallpox, and they are represented in the images as flying in opposite directions to escape the wrath of Parnashabri. The prostrate figures under the feet are the disease and pestilences in human shape. The figure under the right leg apparently is a man attacked with smallpox, as we can judge from the circular marks all over the body. And other figure under the left foot is probably attacked with some fatal disease. Both the images of Parnashabri are decidedly very fine examples of the Bengal school of art. So these are Gram Devtas, and they personify so many different thoughts and concepts and spirits of religion. So that is why I cited them here. Again, so here there was a discussion on Harati in the previous presentation. Here, Harati is shown in the Buddhist idea, and she is also in the, especially in Central Asia, she is not Central Asia and the Middle East. She is worshipped also for relief and prevention from smallpox, and she protects the children. It has been very exhaustively discussed in the previous paper, so I won't go into that. But this is Harati, and again, she is shown as the counterpart of Ketu. And there is a very interesting thing I want to tell you about this: how thought works, and from thought emerges iconographic concepts and religious concepts. They say that in the first centuries, according to archaeological research and findings, they say that in the first 3 centuries of the Christian era, to which this image belongs, there was a time when smallpox was very random in the Middle East area, especially in Afghanistan and the Jammu area. So that is also something that we can consider or think about. And what brings about syncretism is also sometimes it reflects the current trends of those times, and they can also help us in interpreting uh, syncretic images, apart from, of course, consulting the literary text and so on and so forth. So this is one image, and this is one example. Now, it is the conclusion of one part of my discussion here. Um, this image of Vara, this rock carving of Vara, is actually taken here not for giving an example of the image of Vara, but for Bhudevi. So, emerging from the perennial waters, we know the story of the Varaha avatar, and we see the Bhudevi as a beautiful young nymph-like maiden depicted here in, of course, one of the finest sculptures of the early historical period, and it has been shown here. But I would like to draw your attention to the Bhudevi shown here, or the earth goddess. She has just been lifted from the perennial waters, and she's shown resting on a lotus bloom. And the Nagas are paying obeisance, and the waves and all, they show the waters and I mean, it is a fully cosmological image, I should say. It is showing all the three worlds. So this is one image of Bhudevi. Now this image and this concept evolved, and at a later time, during the course of centuries, Bhudevi was worshipped as a separate goddess. And even now, there are so many hymns that we chant, Rigvedic hymns also, and this is one of the most um, beautiful images of the earth goddess from Bangkok. As trying to wring her hair, and the water is perpetually coming out into this pot, and people come here and they partake of this water, which is considered to be holy. So, see, water and earth, two elements, the basic elements. So they come together and they syncretize and they move and they evolve into so many different varied forms. It is unimaginable. And to me, I feel that syncretism is inherent, and there are reasons for bringing together things. Yes, those reasons keep changing from time to time, but syncretism is something which has always been there and continues to be there still. So this is one part of my discussion. Now I come to a very startling discovery. Uh, uh, it is about a book that I own. It is just a small personal experience that I'm sharing. It was a book that I owned as a child. It was a book written on Indian gods and heroes. by a Western author. I don't remember her name. And the Western people, especially the British, when they came and ruled here and they went back to their own home country, they tried to, bring forth these stories as fables for as popular reading, as children's stories. And they were narrative stories basically, but that was the time when books had to be illustrated. So they employed their own artists to study these stories and fables and figure out and make their own pictures. So what we actually see in Gandhara art in the Kushan period, we are seeing in the later period also. Here is one image. So this is a painting made by a very famous miniature artist, Evelyn Paul. This illustration was given in the story of Sita Haran, published in the UK as a children's storybook. And here you see Sita. She spots the magical golden deer and she is fascinated by him. So you can see that the entire concept is very, very Indian based on the epic Ramayana, but the rendering is so beautifully fused together with the Indian story. So here we see Sita. Her attire, her apparel is also not very Indian, and the looks are also very Western, especially the hairstyles, the jewelry, and even the flora and fauna that is shown in the background. Here is when Yamraj comes to take away Satyavan. This is that story. So here, the at the base, the title written is Snow White Bull. Yam is not Snow White. In fact, it is the darkest of gray that you can imagine. But here he is shown as he's been identified as the Snow White Bull, the Vahan of Yam, the god of death. Then this is another painting. These are all hand paintings. They are very beautifully done. Then this is the story of I think Nachiketa, and then we come to the next, the breaking of the bow by Janak. Sorry, the breaking of the bow of Janak by Ram. So this is the figure of Ram shown in a very different, very interesting attire. And the most important thing is that Sita is present there on elephant back, and she is almost painting with um, shyness, and everyone is very happy and amazed that the bow of Janak has been snapped into two pieces by Ram. So this is actually a picture of the Sita Swayamvar. Um, of course, the hero in this picture is Ram, and the heroine is Sita. But the 3D effect brought about by the artist is very beautiful. These are watercolor paintings, and I think they are masterpieces of art. But the question is, can you call them Indian art? Ram launched at his foe a fearsome bolt. So this is the slaying of uh, Kumbhakaran. And this is again Ram. You can see him here. Then you can see him here fighting the battle and the battle in Ramayana. And the elephant has been decorated in a very different manner, almost Greco-Roman style maybe, but very different. And this is Kumbhakaran, and he's been slain by Ram. Again, the god of fire rose from myth. So this is the Agni Pariksha of Sita, a very tangible scene, a very beautifully rendered scene, where the Agni Pariksha of Sita is going on. No one is happy, and even the Hanuman and the other Vanar Sena of Ram is showing is shown as protecting, and Lakshman is bent like this, and Ram doesn't know what to do. But from the flames, we see Agni rising, which is actually in the story, and he is giving an angry look that the purest of pure soul, Sita, had to undergo this. So the spirit of the entire story has been shown very well, but the style is very, very unique and very, very interesting. The color themes are also very interesting, normally not used in the Indian subcontinent because here we go for very bold combinations, sharp contrast, but here there is a blending of the brownish background, then the brown and dull colored clothing, and then suddenly the orange flame, which makes this painting definitely a beautiful masterpiece. So this is the story of Prahlad, considered to be another hero in Indian mythology. So here he wild elephants were sent to attack him, but he overcomes them just by praying to Vishnu. We know the story of Prahlad. And then this is Satyavan and Savitri. Uh, Indeed, this is one of the most beautiful paintings that I have seen of Evelyn Paul. You can see Yam standing here, and he is shown almost merging in the background, except for the halo behind him. And she is trying to wake him up. And the desperation and the posture of Satyavan and Savitri is very lifelike and very beautiful. But the background is given as very dull, which actually is deliberate for me because the scene is of Satyavan dying and the coming of Yam to take him away. And this is a story, this is a scene from the story of Nal Damayanti, and it is a slightly amorous scene, very beautifully shown. When Nal comes to Damayanti and he's trying to appease her, and she wouldn't be appeased at any cost. This is the painting showing the scenes of the Pandavas in a Gyatva from the Mahabharata, and it is the golden lotuses, and you can see the other Pandavas lying in a faint in the background, and then this is the figure of him. You can see the rushing waters here, and it is a small pond with beautiful, fragrant and beautiful flowers. Then this is the combat between Bhim and Jarasandh. Again in the Mahabharata, the entire embellishments and everything are very Western and Greek-Roman. You can in fact even see the duck flying away in a scare. And usually, I don't know whether, I mean, ducks in association with a scene from Mahabharata would be very unique, uh, but never to be found in India. Then this is the final journey of the Pandavas and the discourse of Yudhishthir uh, with Krishna. And Krishna is telling him that you have to go, and you can see the skeletons all over the road. So it's a deep and dark and scary journey. Again, a very beautiful painting. Because syncretism is not just in iconography, or as many a times we confuse iconography with art. Art is a different thing. Art, what I have shown is in the Evelyn Paul painting, that the theme and the representation of the gods and heroes is very, very Indian in concept. But the art is so different that it immediately takes up a very different garb or a form. So that is why I have done this. And thank you so much for listening to me patiently.